Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are having a look at the pack sales for Russia when it comes to War Thunder. Starting off with the IS-6. The IS-6 for some reason got downtied. I have no idea why this thing got downtied. It was a little bit ago. It's an insanely good vehicle. It has access to 122mm if it gets in a lower BR game like a 6070. The armor is incredibly good on it. The turret is one of the most trolley things you'll ever find, and it doesn't have like the shoot me here button that a lot of Soviet vehicles do when it comes to its armor. The major thing that happens with this is because it has a long reload on the 122 and the penetration isn't the best on it, a lot of people try and force the issue with this thing because they think, oh, I'm a heavy tank, I need to push. No, most of the time you can just chill and just bonk people with the gun. Major issues with it, once again, reload of the gun and also gun depression. Everything else on the vehicle is absolutely fantastic. I suppose it is a heavy tank, so it doesn't get access to artillery and stuff like that, but it does get access to the BR-471B. Most things that you face, it will be able to pen straight through the front. The only thing you'll have an issue with is against higher tier heavies from either America or USSR. And guess what? You don't face the ones from USSR, so it's literally only America. So this thing gets bullied by stuff like the M103, sometimes the T32, but the T32 even struggles against the IS-6. As I said, I have no idea why this thing got downtied. It was completely fine at its BR, and now it's really, really good, just like the T29 for the Americans. It's in a really good place at the moment, and also it's one of the only vehicles that is a heavy tank that can go in reverse very efficiently, just like a lot of the other Soviet heavies. This is in a really nice place, not just because it's a good vehicle for the BR, but also T-44-100 IS-3, banger lineup. You also have the ZSU-57-2 if you want to have a bit of fun, and also for the Soviets you got a really good 7.3, you got a really good 7.7 as well, so if you get up-tiered, you just have a barnstorming time. The major issue with the Soviets is you don't have a 6.7, so if you get down-tiered, you can do really well, but if you get up-tiered, you still have good support from allies. So this just, I have no idea why this thing went down. It's probably went down because of its reload, but everything else about it is very nice. The T55AM1 is also on offer this time. This is a Hellspawn vehicle, meaning that it is one of the most annoying vehicles to face when it comes to the game. It's at 8.3 when its brother, the Drozd, is at 8.7, even though they're basically the same vehicle. It's just one is a standard tech tree one, so therefore it's played by people who are different to who play the premium one. The T55AM1 is also at rank 6, so that means it can efficiently research all of the tech tree without having been like a really high BR. So this is actually a really nice vehicle to have. If you don't want to play the higher echelons of the game to grind stuff out, you can instead play this BR and have a really nice time. Just like the other two premiums we talked about, 8.3 Soviet is fantastic. You've got the T62, which is really good. You got the T55A, the T10M, which I really enjoy, the BMP2, the IT1, which especially the IT1's good in specific situations where the BMP2 is just good all the time. You have a really nice lineup here. The major issue you have is AAs. AAs are pretty bad around this BR for the Soviets, but everything else works very well, even in the air with stuff like MiG-15s and so on. The T55AM has a few weaknesses. It can't really go backwards, it doesn't have good gun depression, and also its reload is pretty long. Everything else makes it very annoying to face. It has APF-SDS, it has the laser to back it up, it has the ATGM, which people use if they don't want to aim, and also it has smokes and pretty much everything else. It has artillery as well. It has good mobility on the vehicle going forward, just not going backwards. So a lot of T55AMs get themselves in situations where they get shot in the side or they can't reposition, which means that they're very easy to kill. If this thing gets down-tiered, it's one of the most annoying vehicles to face. The reason is because the standard shell in 8.0, 7.7, 7.3 is Heat FS, and you don't get access to APF-SDS, and you get access to APDSs, which a lot of the time will pen but not do a ton of damage. So what does the T55AM have? It has, of course, composite armor with a ton of chemical protection. This makes it very annoying to fight if you only have Heat FS, meaning that you can shoot here, and then you can kill the toes of the driver, or you can shoot the breech and Hail Mary hope for the best. And that means that this thing in a down tier is the devil. In an up tier, it's still fine because it has APF-SDS. It doesn't have a lot of the other capabilities like thermals and stuff like that, and also great targeting speed on the gun compared to others, but you can still be useful in a defensive posture. The 255AM is a really, really nice pickup if you're looking to grind up the top tier Soviets, and as I said, you don't want to go at a higher VR. The Object 120 is also here on sale, and this vehicle is also a very good one, but it's very different to the IS-6. The major difference is the fact that this thing has no armor, so therefore its playstyle has to be very much modified. It's got good mobility thanks to the chassis, but it doesn't have great gun depression, and also the reload rate isn't the best. So pretty much what you have here is something that needs to go on a flank and engage stuff from long ranges. It'll be able to penetrate anything that it finds. It has a really nice APF-SDS shell, which is the one you should use, or APDS-FS as it's known. It has insanely good muzzle velocity, really good penetration. This round can just annihilate anything that you'll find. But the main issue with this is after the 5 to 10 minute mark, planes exist and you'll die. So it's what I class as a flash in the pan vehicle. You can have a very high impact with this thing at the start of a battle. If you get into very good sniper positions, if you take out 2 to 3 to 4 targets pretty quickly, you can lock down an area of the map just with this thing. If they shoot back though, you're going to have a bit of an issue because it doesn't have any armor. So that's a bit of a problem. But if you get into the position and shoot first, which, you know, is generally what you should do in War Thunder, this thing can be super deadly. It also has a really good lineup around it, once again at 7.3, but its major issue is artillery and also planes and CAS in general. If CAS didn't exist, this thing would be a much higher BR than it is. But CAS does exist, so it isn't. Simple as, really. But it's still a lovely vehicle to play, and once again, you're very limited when it comes to options for rank 5 Soviets, when it comes to premiums, so it might be worth having a look at the rank 6s. The legitimate Hellspawn is also on offer, the KA-50. This was so broken when it came out and was broken for about a year until after release. Still is broken, by the way. Still insanely good for what it does, and also a fantastic vehicle to be able to grind out the Soviet tech tree, so you can get even more broken vehicles at the end of the day. The KA-50 is fantastic at everything. It doesn't have a weakness, which is why it's very annoying to face in game. You have access to the Vikir missile, which is one of the longest range missiles in the game. That means that it can take off, shoot missiles usually, and then kind of drop down again. It's super annoying to face. It also has Iglas to try and keep it alive, but most people just do the full 80 gem loadout, because guess what? The Vikir is also a proximity missile, meaning that if something comes near you in the air, you can just bop it. What ends up happening even against missile AAs is the KA-50 can fire multiple missiles at the same time, and then the missile AA fires a missile to hit the KA-50, and then the KA-50 Vikir actually explodes on the missile, and then the missile AA gets annihilated. It's why the KA-50 is one of the most annoying things to fight. It also has access to the Moor, which is of course its countermeasures suite, so it's automatic, so you don't even have to think. If you get locked, it just pops by itself. And then also at the same time, it just works very, very well. It has a 30mm that you'll never use because you'll be 10 kilometers away from the battlefield. And also at the same time, it's really good in heli PvE because it can grind out everything, and has really good rewards on it. This thing is one of the most annoying vehicles in the game to face. The only thing that's more annoying than it is probably the drones right now, or the K-52 and Mi-28 and M, which you can use, or which you can use this to grind them out. So if you want to become the devil's best friend, this thing is not a bad pickup. The TURMS is also on sale, and it is a upgraded T-72A. Now, the T-72A platform I have enjoyed quite a lot. It's a very fun vehicle to use, and as you can see, by my stats. I'm plus 50 in it, 52% win rate, and then stuff like the T-72B, you know, we're plus 80 in it, 68% win rate, all of that good stuff. So I do pretty well in these vehicles, but the T-72AV being at a higher BR than the standard T-72A, even though it has the additions to it, I feel like it means that the vehicle itself can be very good, but it still has inherent weaknesses, especially now that the APFSDS has been buffed for a lot of vehicles. And what I mean by buffed is, I mean they got additional rounds to be good. So the terms, the big upgrade over the standard T-72A is the weapon system and also the gun itself. It has Gen 2 thermals, which are really nice for 9.7, especially in night battles, and also it gets 3BM42, which is a very strong APFSDS round for the gun. Its weaknesses are, its gun depression isn't the best, but it's quite low to the ground, so that doesn't matter too much. Its reload rate is worse than most vehicles with crew skills. This thing has an autoloader, so it's stuck at 7.1, where the crew skills, a lot of people can get down to 6 or 5 on their vehicles. Its actual targeting speeds are terrible on the gun, which is one of the big issues. So, for example, right, so 12 degrees of targeting speed on this, if I compare this to, let's say, I don't know, the Abrams, when it isn't even in my crew, so it has 34 degrees per second targeting speed. So getting the gun on target, the terms on target can be a pain. It can be a pain to do. So you have to play more defensively for it. It's also not the fastest vehicle around the place, and it also can't reverse either. So the terms overall, I know a lot of people big it up and everything, but its armor's not very good at 9.7 nowadays. Its gun is good, like the round is good, but its targeting is not great, and also its mobility is subpar compared to many others. So it relies on certain factors to be good, but I don't think it's, like, if you compare it to the other premiums that are around this BR, stuff like the 2A4, the Challenger DS, even things like the XM1, I would probably take those over it just because of the mobility stuff. Yes, the terms has trolley armor. Yes, it has good parts of it, but I feel like if you're a newer player or you're looking to get into high tiers by, you know, grinding stuff like this out, there are just a ton of weaknesses this vehicle has, and therefore can be a bit more rough. I think stuff like the T55AM is much more forgiving than a vehicle like the Terms. The TU1 is also on offer, and this thing kind of just got dropped in the game randomly like a few updates ago, and hasn't really done anything since. The main thing is because the vehicles in the standard tech tree are already pretty good, so the TU1 doesn't really have a place, and I feel like generally the GE vehicles like the Yak VK are much better at grinding out the tech tree than it. If you are a person who doesn't at all want to grind out the USSR aviation tech tree, but you do want to play ground or naval, this ain't a bad pick, but the thing is there are just better options in the tech tree if you do want to grind them out. So 5.3 or 5.7 for, you know, the army side of things. The Soviets have pretty decent lineups, you know, T-3485s, obviously the IS-2 just went up, but at 5.3 you got the IS-1, T-3485, PT-76, you know, you can have a bit of fun with this lineup, and once again with the T-3485, the IS-U-122S, the BTR-ZD, you can do alright, and you could probably use this thing up to maybe 6.3, 6.7, which, you know, is around the place, but also you can just use the TU-2S, which is also very good, or, you know, if you're at 5.7, the other TU-2Ss. So the TU-1 doesn't really work in that capacity, because you already have, as I said, standard tech tree ones, which are kind of better. This thing has really dodgy armament as well, like 245mm and 223mm. Like, yeah, it hits like a truck, but it's one of those vehicles that's not really good enough to be able to, like, get into positions where you're going to use the 45s. And the Soviet 45s, like, they if you fire them, you lose a ton of energy with the vehicle, and also you're not really guaranteed to do anything. It's like the Grizzly, right? For the Americans, it's much better to use bombs and rockets. And this thing, it gets 3 1000s, which is really good, or 3 500s, which is also really good. So that's nice. But once again, like with the TU-2s, you also get very similar bomb drops, maybe slightly worse, but much better characteristics when you fly the plane. The big thing about this is you get 2 of these. the torpedoes. So this can actually be useful in naval forces. And you know, the Soviets don't have a ton of naval forces options when it comes to torpedoes. So if you're interested in that stuff like that, this is not a bad idea. But for ground, there are just better options. The Su-7's in a pretty rough place right now. This thing is very much overshadowed by the Su-25 that came in. If you have a look at the capabilities of the Su-25K compared to the Su-7, this thing just looks completely useless. The only thing that this thing does better is it's faster, nothing else. The Su-25K does everything better. Well, I suppose the other thing this does better is this is actually on discount now, and the Su-25K isn't. But you could just wait until next summer when the Su-25K will be on offer. It does get access to CCIPs, which is nice, so it makes it a little bit easier to play. Basically, you're just a massive fat dart that goes fast with ordnance on it. And nowadays, with the napalm, you can actually kill a base, which is cool, because previously you couldn't. So there's at least that. But in aerialistic, this, because of the fact that this thing lost its air spawn, rightfully by the way, it has now just become cannon fodder with anything with missiles. This does not have countermeasures, so it can just get annihilated. When it comes to actually fighting stuff in ground forces, it can be a little bit useful, but still not the best. Like, still in a rough place compared to many others that kind of exist, because it has no way of defending itself apart from speed. And as we found out with the F-104s, especially the early ones, that only works up to a point, and they've just added more and more crazy missiles at these BRs, meaning that this has become cannon fodder. This is a very frustrating vehicle to play compared to what it used to be. This used to be very good, but then they added stuff like the A-10 and the Su-25, the Harriers, and all of these different things, which just donk on this thing. This is just a death sentence and a very depressing vehicle to play. I suppose the shining light of it, but which is very low, by the way, a very small shining light, is there is a battle pass thing where you have to destroy 15 players using an air vehicle at a speed of at least 800. You have to kill ground vehicles. This thing will be very good at that, you know, with the rockets and the bombs and everything, but that's really about it. So yeah, it's I wouldn't bother with this. It's just a waste of time. I would actually say it's probably better just to pay extra to get the Su-25K and have a bit more fun. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank Forge, Siegebreak, Carrion Crow, Nicholas Richardson, Elove Goat, Pyman, Winter Scientist, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, and also Sem Arslan, Wilkski, Uncle Bean, Derek R., Bareen, Lafouche, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.